Hey peeps, this is Ferny, your resident psychic medium and spiritual teacher, and you're listening to Ferny Unfiltered, where we dive into topics that enlighten, inform, and entertain the soul. On today's episode, we are talking to business coach and brand expert, Kristie Keever. So stick around as we dive into business branding, law of attraction, and how you can successfully start your own business using both. When I first met you, you were a client, right? Because I think that's the first time I ever connected with you.
That is correct.
And I remember you were in your office, and you probably were in a different office space because you've changed your office space throughout the time we've known each other. But I remember talking to you, and there was this like she's got it. Like there's like she's got it. And whenever I do readings for people and I talk to certain people, there are some people that just stand out versus the others, and I know that they got it. Like if I'm watching RuPaul's Drag Race and they're competing and we're always like which one's going to be the queen at the end of it, like there's always one that kind of she's got it, but we hope that she can get herself there because it's not about whether they have it or not, it's whether are they going to use it, And so when I met you and I started talking to you, even though I was doing the reading for you, I knew that you had it. So I was like, okay, I feel legitimized by that feeling about your work. So you were in my head, and for several weeks and months, even after the session that we had, I was thinking to myself, I need to coordinate my brand. I need to get my brand together. I need to get a kind of vibe going because I don't know how I'm being presented to the world, and I want to make sure that I'm coming across in the way that I need to connect with people. And so you kept popping in my head every single time I thought of that, and I was like, I need to reach out to her. I need to reach out to her. And I even like put your name to the side and I wrote it down somewhere. And so that's when, like, fast forward, I was doing a live and you popped on there, and I was like, hey, I need to connect with you. We need to talk soon. And like you emailed me like within an hour, and you were like, hey, what's up? What can I do for you? And after that, it made it so much easier to move forward with it. And I have to admit, like, I was super intimidated just reaching out to you and connecting with you because you felt like, okay, she knows her shit. Like, she's super professional. She's got it all. Like, she knows what she's doing. I still feel like I'm figuring some things out, and I don't want to make a fool of myself. But of course, once we connected and I talked to you, like, you made me feel so comfortable. And so it was so easy. And I was like, Ferny, it's easy to get your shit together with your brand. So I'm going to help you through this. Trust me on the process. And after that, I felt like, okay, we can work together. We can work together. So that's how I remember our first connection or our first meet. So how did you feel about the way we connected?
I think the way that you described it is exactly the same experience for me.
Yeah.
I originally found you from a mutual friend
Mm,
who said, you have to talk to him. He's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And so I finally booked my first session, and that was the first time we spoke.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt connected to you immediately too. And it's so funny that you say that, yes, you can tell the people who just have that something special
Mm-hmm.
that really can shine and attract people to you in a much bigger, bolder way. But you have to see it first, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do with it? Like what
Yeah.
you said. And so I felt that same way with you. And I knew that when the time was right, there was going to be a connection there, and I just had to wait for the time to hit.
Yeah. Well, and through the course of it, because we did coaching sessions for what, like 6 months? Like we did it for a
Mm-hmm.
while, and
Yep.
every week we met at the same time. We talked for a good hour and a half every single time. It didn't feel like work to me. It felt like you
A
were,
conversation.
yes, it felt like a conversation, and it felt like I was learning or figuring some things out about myself that were obvious to you but weren't as obvious to me. And so it's almost like you were making it very obvious and clear, Ferny, this is your brand, this is who you are, this is what you want. And I was like, it's one thing to when you have an audience or when you start building your business. It's another thing when you need a strategy and you need focus for what you're going to do with it, because anyone can have a business, but you kind of need to know where you're going to go with it. And I felt like you built that road for me. I mean, literally, like, guys, this is what we like. We literally have this massive like book of all of the stuff that we went through, and I show this to people all the time. I'm like, yeah, this is what, because I was talking to my friend last night, and he was like, yeah, I have an audience audience and my grouping or whatever, I'm like, oh, you're talking about your avatar? Are you talking about your avatar? And he's like, what's an avatar? I'm like, you don't know what an avatar is? Like, so let me tell you, Kristie taught me that an avatar. And so we went into what and my avatar was, which is my ideal client, or the two different ideal clients in my instance. But what, like, talking to you over the like many months, like I realized that we have a lot of similar backgrounds. Like, I grew up very poor, and I remember in the grocery line with my mom, and she had to pay with the paper food stamps, and I was so embarrassed, and I was like, oh my God. So for me, when you related to that, I was like, oh my God, someone else who understands like what that's like what, I mean, how did you go from that to this, you know?
Oh gosh, yeah, you're as soon as you were just talking about that right there, immediately I can see my mother standing there and me probably about middle school age, so embarrassed and just excusing myself to go play with the horse or whatever, you know, the little penny horse that they had, so that I didn't have to carry that embarrassment as well, because what if somebody from school saw me?
Yeah.
But how did that transformation happen? It's definitely been a journey, because it's not something where you just wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to be a brand strategist.
Right.
And I'm going to show people how awesome they are. And I'm going to help them put it together in a strategy that's packaged really awesome that draws clients to them. You don't just wake up and decide, right?
Right.
It's kind of an evolutionary process to where through action and through consistency and through trial and error and the willingness to ask questions that you find yourself at this point.
Did you have to go through this whole process yourself, like finding your brand and understanding or did you end up just doing the research and then knowing how to do it?
It was more doing the research and knowing how to do it. And it all stemmed from my willingness to ask questions. I was the kid who, why? Because I always wanted to know. I had this insatiable desire to just learn and to know knowledge. And so I love asking questions. And so when I get in conversations with people, I ask questions. I ask deep questions that allows you to think and open up your mind, but also allows me to explore opportunity. Because when I ask questions, I do it from the perspective of with the intent to hear what's being said instead of with the intent to just respond.
What were you doing before you were a brand strategist? Like, what was the work that you were doing, or what was your career?
Yeah, so my career has always been in marketing, advertising, market research, stuff like that. So it's always been in the same type of industry, if you will. But in my corporate career, I always, no matter which position or role or carried or company that I worked for, there was always missing pieces, right? People would always come and say, I'm so frustrated because this isn't working, or that's not working, or I'm trying this and I'm trying that and nothing's happening. What am I missing, right?
Yeah.
And what they're missing is actually having solid pillars, a core foundation to actually stand from. So it's like building a house. Especially when it comes to building your brand, building your business, people want to rush to that, hiring the interior decorator and picking out all the colors and doing all those things, where they're not actually figuring out what's the structure for it, what's the strategy, what's the blueprint, like what are we creating before we actually go in and paint the walls.
So it's almost like people need to have a clear understanding of who they are and what they want first before they can start the process of creating that actual brand. So it's more like knowing what you're doing before you actually do it. That's what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Because if you are trying to, go on this journey to reach this destination and you have no idea what that destination is or what it looks like, then how are you ever going to know if you get there?
Have you seen a big difference with how many years have you done personal or business brand strategy?
So business brand strategy for myself altogether for about 12 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
But in industry for about 20.
Yeah. I know a lot of people who they're just getting into brand strategy, but they're wanting to do it for other people, but they don't understand it fully themselves. And so I can see them making common mistakes that someone like you doesn't make. And I can see the huge difference between someone who's been doing this for 10 or 12 years versus these people who have only been like studying it and following and watching YouTube videos and have only been doing it for less than a year or a couple of years. It's a huge, like, obvious difference, and I'm always like, okay, it's like you didn't get the VIP service I got. That's what that looks like.
And not only that, but there's like a growth curve to it too. It's
Mm.
like with every client and every person that you work with, you learn something new,
Yeah.
right? You're
Yeah.
able to fine tune and tweak your process. And I remember when I first started, I was doing strategy sessions and they were taking 8 hours to do a full strategy session to
Yeah.
pull out all of that information. Whereas now I can do it in 45 minutes.
Yeah. Well, when I was doing all the sessions with you, we covered so much information. You taught me so many. It's one of those things where you don't even realize how much you've learned until you are fast forward, then you're hearing other people talking or people discussing certain things. And I'm like, they're discussing brand strategy or they're discussing like branding or marketing or this or that. And I was like, So all these little things that I didn't even realize in the moment when I was learning with you, like suddenly become like, I get why that's important. Or now I know what she's talking about, the email chain. What's she talking about? Email list. What is she? And now I'm like, I get where she's coming from with the email list. So with the corporate job, with the corporate work and the brand strategy work with clients, with one-on-one clients and companies and businesses, like is there a huge difference in the way that smaller organizations need to be kind of focused on brand strategy versus the larger companies, organizations?
That's an excellent, excellent question. So the answer to that is yes and no, but
Mm,
mostly no. There's
mm,
no difference
mm.
because every structure starts with the same type of blueprint,
Yeah.
right? There's foundation, there's pipes, there's walls, there's framing, there's roofing. If you're thinking of an analogy of building a house, it's a similar, you're building a building,
Mm,
right?
mm-hmm.
And so the core to it and the structure to it, so that foundation is the same no matter if you're a Fortune 500 company or if you're a solo entrepreneur.
Mm,
The details that you put inside, however, your approach and your conversations and the
mm.
way that you communicate, that is going to be different, right?
Yeah.
So a corporation will have a whole suite of avatars for their different types of product offerings that they have,
Mm-hmm.
whereas a solopreneur has at most 1 to 3.
Yeah, and just to make it clear for people, because when we use the word avatars, people who still haven't taken
Yeah.
done work with you, an avatar, guys, is someone who essentially is a representation of your ideal client. Because when you're going to market yourself or you're going to promote yourself, you want to promote yourself to people who would like to connect with you or who are looking for your service. In other words, if you're making, milkshakes, you don't want to go to a health club and start offering milkshakes. You want to go to a hot carnival where everyone's like, "It's so hot," but they're like really longing for a juicy milkshake. So it's all about being really strategizing and focusing on your ideal client and trying to focus more on those individuals instead of just randomly putting your stuff out there. Right? I something that I learned from you is that, most people nowadays, they think, oh, I'm going to just write a book and be famous, or people are going to love me. And I was talking to a client yesterday and I said, that's the older way of doing stuff. It's the older model. Now you're really not going to get a book deal unless you already have a show or you've already got an audience base, because
Mm-hmm.
that's a guarantee, like, source of money for the people who are going to invest in the book. So nowadays, if someone wants to be picked up by a publisher, you either have to have some incredible material, and most people don't. Most people have just, good material, but it's not like stand above everybody else in the world. So they have
Mm-hmm.
to have an audience to be able to promote or be able to begin that process of being successful in the launch of that product or in the launch of that book. And so I was telling the client yesterday, like, well, you're interested in writing a book. Not a bad idea. You need an audience before you even put it out there, because you're probably not going to get a publisher picking it up just like that unless you're someone well known and you have an audience already. And I learned that from you.
Absolutely.
I learned that from you. So I was like
Uh,
hearing your words in my head when I was repeating this to her. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like totally Christifying it.
you're a good student, young Padawan.
Hmm.
Your audience actually is literally everything.
Yeah.
When you think about all those celebrities and music stars who have really hit it big and they're accepting their awards on TV and
Mm.
stage, and who do they think? They think they're fans because
Hmm.
they know without their fan base, they can't have that level of success that they've been able to accomplish.
Yeah.
And so I like to say, like, everybody knows Madison Square Garden. And for any musician out there, like, that is the ultimate dream and the ultimate goal is to have a sold out crowd and be the opening act, or not but the, main act at
Hmm.
Madison Square Garden. Well, what people don't realize and take into consideration that in order to have that sold out crowd, you have to be first willing to play county fairs. You have to sell out county fairs. And even before that, you have to do open mic nights,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like a journey, it's an evolution, but with the right people, accumulating the right conversations with the right people and allowing that snowball effect to kind of manifest so that you're building that momentum.
Yeah. It's like Lady Gaga. I use her as an example because people just saw her, so they thought she just came out of nowhere. But
Overnight success.
Yeah, but she'd been doing this since she was a teenager in school. I mean, there was a Facebook group, a hate Facebook group about her and how they used to make fun of her because she was an attention whore. And so she was out there promoting herself and trying to like make a name for herself in the music industry, just singing at bars and clubs, etc. And people would just, they had this page at college where they would make fun of her and they would pick on her because they didn't like her. And then I think one of those individuals like years later realized who she was and was like, oh my God, this is the girl in our page that we still have up who we are hating on, that we've been hating on since college. But she spent years building herself up and becoming and transforming into this person. And so you're saying it's going to take time. It's going to take, effort to build that audience and to build that group.
It also it takes time to build up the haters along with it, because not everybody's going to like what it is that you're doing or what you have to say or how you're going to do it. But when you start having people openly express their dislike to what you're doing and how you're doing it, then you're doing it right.
Yeah. I've been in the last few months, I've been getting a lot more haters and people who post stuff like, who does he think he is or whatever, or they will make a comment on one of my reviews or whatever. And I'm like, wow, this is starting to suddenly happen a lot more. And I just see it as a status of growth. Like, it is. Like, I got to the point where I've got haters now. That's great.
You should feel proud. You should have like a hater wall in your office.
Like, I love haters. I love them. They're giving me attention. And I'm, I just a few years ago, that was not even on the radar. So. How's with brand strategy and with helping these companies and these people, have you noticed that the strategy has had to adapt or change because now social media is so much more influential? How has that gradually changed over since when you started doing this 12 years ago?
Oh yeah, that's a great question too. Where I've seen the most dramatic change is shift into more quality, authentic, wholehearted, holistic conversations with people. It's not just surface level or superficial, like you were saying about content. A lot of people have really good content out there, but more people have not so good content.
Yeah.
And so it's about how are you connecting and communicating? How well do you really know your audience so that the information that you are talking about is something that actually tugs at the heartstring and makes somebody say, yes, I need that. You're speaking my language, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really evolved into teaching people how to get really comfortable just being yourself right where you are, because somebody needs to hear what you have to say and they need to know and appreciate the journey that you've gone through. But a lot of people are afraid to share it because they think it's too personal.
Do you, with dealing with the clientele base that you've had over the many years, have you seen reoccurring themes with people who they can do it, but they fall short? And are there certain things that you're noticing in their personalities or in their the way they react to stuff? What do you think are the few things that you've been seeing as recurring themes?
Two major areas are the stopping points for whether or not you're actually going to make it, if you will, right? Step number one is your willingness to just be yourself, right? Allow yourself to really come out, because a lot of times people would come to me and say, oh, I found, these 6 websites and I love exactly what she's doing and I want to have it exactly like this and do it this way and say it just like this. But you can't do that. It has to be you. It has to feel the same, whether somebody sees you online or talks to you in person or on the phone. It has to feel seamless, right? So getting to the point where you get comfortable enough to actually allow that to show and embrace that, then that's a huge thing. So people have struggles with that, because what happens is it actually translates. And here's the second piece to that, is actually being able to communicate with consistency, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like teaching people and for yourself, learning how to just be comfortable with the conversation and having that conversation to the right person
Mm-hmm.
and believing in the message so much that that's the thing that matters and drives you forward, because you're going to have conversations that people aren't going to like.
Yeah.
You're going to be judged by rude people who don't have nice things to say.
Mm.
And that's a fear of putting yourself out there and showing up that holds people back.
Mm. So
Right?
it's almost like trying to prevent yourself from looking or from being a certain way that isn't fit within your mindset of how you should look every second of every day or be every second of every day.
Yeah, because if you think about it, our society, how we've learned is to draw in the lines and stay in the lines and follow the rules and do it this way. And here's the rule book for it. Well, the truth is there is no rule book, and we're each so unique in so
There's a
many
rule book.
different
Apparently,
ways.
there's a rule book.
There is a little bit of a rule book, but
Yeah.
it's more about just allowing yourself to be you,
Mm.
no matter where you are. And so many people think that, oh, I haven't gotten to a certain level yet,
Yeah.
so I can't talk about that,
Yeah.
or I can't say that, or I can't teach that because I'm not ready, or who am I to think that I can, right? Truth is, you only have to be a few steps ahead of somebody else that you're teaching in order to make a difference and make an impact, because your experience that you've gone through it is what matters most. It's not the step by step that you go through.
Yeah, I think that's something
Right?
that I personally gotten more comfortable with, just because as I go through my own personal spiritual evolution, I mean, I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly open to let me learn more, let me understand more, let me grasp more. And as soon as I grasp more, I want to share it with people. And in some instances, I'm still not the expert when it comes to that topic, but what I've learned has helped me immensely. Let me pass it on to you. And I think it's helped me to feel more comfortable with just being myself with people, because I can tell them, hey, look, this is what I know. This is what I understand. This is what I'm good at. But here's for you. You give it a go. So that
Exactly.
idea just has helped me tremendously in my own personal evolution as well.
Yeah, that's a big one, because just knowing, having your own perspective from it is good, but at the same time, being comfortable to say, in my experience, or what I have tried, like, here's what worked, or here's what hasn't,
Yeah.
or here's something that I just came across from somebody else that I was thinking about trying. And I don't know what's going to happen yet,
Yeah.
but come along with me. Let's do it together, and let's see what results we get.
So people just wanting to control the way that they're being perceived. That's one thing that you've seen as like a commonality. What else have you seen with people over the years that's been more of a trend or common block, if you will?
Common block is getting stuck in the how. How does this have to be done? How does this have to look? How does this have to say, or come across as being said, right? How? And because I don't know the how, I'm just going to stop.
Yeah. Well, that was,
Because I'm afraid to ask questions. I'm afraid of looking incompetent or stupid or whatever, because I'm embarrassed, right?
that was my block. Like, that's the reason why I came to you, because that was my block. I was like, what do I do next? Like,
Yep.
God
It's
sent
been
me
my
someone.
block too. It's a block for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. So what the clients that you've been dealing with, like, what is what is the usual niche or the area of work that they tend to revolve around?
Yeah. I work with coaches, consultants, and influencers who are, and those are the people that are showing up. Those are the people who really want to make an impact. Those are the people who want to serve and help support others as well. But at the same time, they're not really unleashing that power within, right? To be able to say, like, this is who I am, this is how I can help you, and here's my process of which that I do it.
Yeah. With the people who have actually gone on that they've achieved or they've been able to get to the next stage, is there a mindset perspective that you've noticed? Like, there's a mindset that they tend to occupy or they tend to sustain versus the people who, hey, I'm paying you money, make me successful, Kristie. And you're like, okay. It's like, I don't think you're paying for success. You're paying for strategy,
Either that, or I'm sorry, I can't take your money.
Yeah. So is there like a mindset thing that you've noticed with some of the
Yes.
people?
Oh, absolutely. Mindset. And the interesting thing about it is that some people, like we talked in the beginning, you can tell some people just have that.
Mm-hmm.
And other people, if they're open and willing to allowing it to form within themselves, they can find it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what they have in common is just that sheer determination that I know my journey, my story, my
Mm.
message needs to be heard by people out there. And I know that I can help people by just showing up and sharing my story.
Yeah.
And I don't care how perfect it's going to be or what it's going to look like. I mean, they do care about what it looks like, don't get me wrong,
Mm.
but they're ready mindset wise, heart set wise is in alignment.
Mm.
And so they're actually more willing to show up and play that bigger game and do it without kind of with reckless abandon in the perspective of, I know my mission is more important than what you don't like about me.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I appreciated about you is that you're not just a brand strategist. You don't just understand the work that's required, but you understand the energy around the movement or the flow of things. And there's
Mm-hmm.
more of a spiritual undertone to your work. And you get law of attraction and manifestational law and the idea of it's not just doing the work, it's also aligning emotionally or mentally or energetically with what you're trying with the vision. And then the
Mm-hmm.
work is more of a supportive pillar, in all of that. So where did that happen? When did that happen in your life where you started to really incorporate more of that into your work?
That actually happened because I was struggling to build my own brand.
Mm.
And so I was coming up those same blocks and I'm thinking to myself, what can I add or what can I do? There's this piece missing. So again, going back to asking questions, what do
Mm.
you feel would make the biggest impact or the biggest difference?
Mm.
Or what do you feel would inspire you to make that shift and actually, start that transformation? Or with my clients who are successful and have reached that $1 million mark, what was that tipping point for you
Mm-hmm.
that kind of changed everything?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And what it boiled down to was two things: having a mindset practice, so law of attraction,
Mm-hmm.
and then it building that confidence, but doing it in a way to incorporate the self love and the personal care to say, I know I'm going to mess up. I know I'm going to fall. I know I'm not going to be consistent, but the most important thing that I can do for myself is keep going, get
Mm.
back up and try it again.
Mm-hmm.
And just admit when you fall, because that's what's going to allow people to resonate and attract to you
Mm.
is when you say, hey, I messed up, but guess what? I'm here today.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do this again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Like owning that part of themselves.
Exactly. Owning that. And so what I did is I actually went and I got certified in law of attraction
Mm.
as a coach in law of
What?
attraction. Yep.
There's the law of attraction
There
certification.
is. I
Oh,
know. It's the Transformation Academy. I went and I got certified in law of attraction and abundance. And then I am this close to completing my certification in confidence coaching as well.
wow. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. It's one thing.
Because I figured like these are the things that I need. And if I need them, and I know I've had more clients stop the process because they're struggling to kind of find the missing pieces.
Mm.
And these are the missing pieces that they needed. So I
Mm.
knew that through my process and my journey of what I was struggling with, I was actually able to expand my knowledge and my skill set to help more people with those missing pieces.
Yeah. So for people who are just like, let's say someone woke up today and they're like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of going to work. I don't like my job. I have a passion or I have an idea for a business
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to require a lot of, marketing and online promotion advertising if they haven't already figured that out.
Mm-hmm.
What are like some top like what are the top three things that those individuals can start off doing that can help to propel them to the next stage so that they don't get stuck at that spot where they just have an
Yeah.
idea but there's no path to follow through with? Like what are the top three
Mm-hmm.
things you think people can do to get themselves rolling?
That's a great question. Top thing that you can do is have an open mind and start exploring.
Mm.
So instead of being on Instagram or Facebook just to see what, your sister-in-law is doing or the cake that your grandma made or whatever's going on, look for those opportunities from people who are entrepreneurs and what are they talking about?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of conversations are they having? You could join a couple of groups on there as well for entrepreneurs who are just getting startups
Mm-hmm.
or just getting started, and see what kind of conversations are being held in there. See what kind of questions are being asked, and ask a few questions as well. Don't be afraid to ask questions because that's where you learn the
Mm-hmm.
most. Um, but the other thing that you can do is start to just take mental note as you go through your day to day of what you enjoy doing. What lights you up? Is it the conversation? Are you the kind of person where people always come to you and say, hey, I need your advice. Hey, I'm stuck in this. Or hey, I'm struggling with this. Or he did this to me again. Or whatever the situation is, right? Are you that go-to person? Or are you the fixer? Are you the person who loves to do the crafts and do all the, the kid activities and put stuff together and organize your friends for girls' night? Like, what is it that you're good at? Because we all have those natural gifts and talents that can absolutely be turned into businesses and make incredible brands out of.
Yeah. I think one thing that you helped me with, especially with the whole, especially the report that you sent me, is you helped me to prioritize my vision, because there are 3 or 4 things I'm really good at, but they're kind of like floating around there. And you were like, okay, look, Ferny, this is first. This is second. No. This is second, Ferny. Like, and you were just telling me like, this is going to be the way you need to order it, because this is where your energy is going. And this will help you to sustain the flow better, so that you prioritize and focus on what is at the top of your list. And then you don't have to put in so much energy into what's at the bottom. And you can actually use what you're doing at the top of the list to repurpose or to use in a different way for some other things that you're already working on. And so I think that really was helpful. I think coaching, having a good coach or a trustworthy coach, is a top thing for people to have.
Yeah, I think, yes, absolutely. So coaching is critical, but once you've kind of figured out a couple of ideas for options, right? So hiring a coach or working with a coach or even a mentor when you're still trying to figure something out, I think that it can be good, but once you've narrowed it down to like, here's 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 things that I've thought of, and I'm not quite sure what to do with these, right? Because I think that hiring a coach prematurely, where you're still trying to figure out like, what are you passionate about? I think life coaching could be good in that capacity, but not necessarily business or branding coaching just yet.
Yeah. Have you had the experience where when you meet people, they feel like they're the only ones who are invested in the vision or in the
Oh,
brand,
yeah.
and they feel like they're alone in their families? They're like, they don't feel like they've got that support that they want or they need. Like, how often have you encountered that?
Oh my gosh, every single time. Every single time. Everybody goes through that, because when you're an entrepreneur and you're in the online entrepreneur space or just entrepreneur space in general, it feels like everybody's talking about the same thing and everybody's doing the same thing. But really, when you put it into perspective, nobody knows. Like, your family doesn't really understand what it is that you do or what's required to do it. Your kids definitely don't understand. Your spouses don't understand. Your significant others, they don't get it. And so it gets really, really lonely, because unless you're tapped into a community or a network who gets it, and you can have those types of conversations to say, hey, girl, I'm really struggling today because this is hard, right? This is really hard. And the worst thing that you can do is isolate yourself and stay small, because when you're trying to build a business, there is a community that you can tap out to. And without that community, getting to that level of success that you really want to is almost impossible.
That sounds like there's a rule that I have where if you are trying to expand energetically in any way, whether it's a business or personal or boundaries or whatever, if you're trying to expand and something is happening where it makes you feel small or makes you feel like you want to retract, instead of retracting and going with that, automatically find a way to expand, whether it's being creative or just doing some activity that allows you to expand out and to kind of, even though you don't feel it, still link up with that bigger vision of yourself, because by doing that, you're basically you're doing 2 things. You're still doing the action that's necessary, even though something's in the way, but you're also telling the universe, hey, I get that this can easily turn me backwards, but I still choose to go forwards. And energetically, you're still pushing yourself forwards, even though you feel alone or you feel like you're the only one that is trying to make this work for you.
Yeah, that's why tapping into community is critical, but also leaving open space to be creative, right? And a lot of people think like being creative is like calling over a couple of girlfriends and having like an all-day strategy session or whatever. But no, creative can be go get a massage, go read a book, go watch a movie, go walk around the park, do a craft night or, something just away from it. I actually tend to find that my most creative time and spaces is when I'm not actually anywhere near any of my work.
What is your favorite thing to do or favorite activity to do that makes you feel like you're creative or connecting to that?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many different things, but I love spending time with my boys. I love dating both my boys, my son and my husband. We
Mm,
go on dates either together or individually and
mm,
just going out and being silly or doing something fun or even something as mundane as doing our weekly grocery shopping
mm.
together, right?
Yeah.
Because conversations always happen. We always run into different people. We always, try new things, even though the routine seems the same.
Yeah.
It's just being open to receive another message, whether it's overhearing a conversation or being inspired by how you see people interacting with each other. Like I'm really observant to kind of
Mm,
what's going on around me.
mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking for deeper meaning to what people just naturally glaze over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So do, you were doing a lot more one-on-one client branding before, and now you've kind of begun incorporating other things and other elements into your business. But I
Mm-hmm.
know you've got like you've got a program for people who are actually just like me, except they haven't started a business yet. They're thinking about it, or they have an idea for something they want to brand, or they want to start the process of that. So what is this program that you have that people can like look for or go to that might help them get to the next stage?
Yeah. So the program that I have is called Invisible to
Mm,
Influential. And it guides people through the process to create that foundational structure that you need
mm-hmm.
first to identify what is that vision that you're creating and what are the steps that you need to put in place in order to actually make it happen, make that vision come to life. And then once you have that, what's the next step of how do you get it out there?
Yeah.
How do you tell the story about it? How do you start building that audience so you have that following to sell out Madison Square Garden?
Yeah, and I don't think people realize like how affordable it is because I mean, just a couple of sessions with me can cover the cost of them going and being able to do this program. And I would much rather have people go and coach with you or take this program if they have a business they want to get off the ground than just coming to me and asking me when am I going to start my business. Well, you'll start your
Yeah.
business when you get your ass moving and you actually take the steps necessary to start your business, you know. So I
Yes,
feel it's
yes.
important, and I think that this program gives people that opportunity. So in the program you said there was something like a support community where it's not just about doing the work or having the structure but also having a community that supports you. Like, can you tell me more about that?
Yes. So there's a couple pieces to this that were really important for me to create
Mm,
because again, there's no rule book to say you have to create a program or a course like
right,
this, right?
right.
And so the two things that I always found missing from other programs was there was no community to support at the level where people feel comfortable to participate,
Mm,
right?
mm-hmm.
And so typically programs and communities are thousands of people. And so it's really hard to feel heard
Mm,
and really hard to feel comfortable enough to ask your questions. So I like smaller communities,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So creating a small community to support in that. And so I created what's called the Action Society.
Mm,
So inside of the Action Society is where you have that small community to support and encourage and guide you through the program that you're learning, because the program gives you the step by step, the how,
mm-hmm.
and then the Action Society it supports, encourages, and promotes you to actually take the action that you need to build out what you have in mind.
I would have loved, like, when I started my business, I would have loved to have a community like that just because
Hmm.
it's nice to know what other people are dealing with or what they're facing in
Oh
their
yeah,
own
absolutely.
businesses, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, when I was doing my psychic development class and I was offering the online class, we had a Facebook group where everybody was able to see what everyone else was doing. And as we would go through each week we had an assignment and I would go and help that person understand how they tuned in or what was going on in their brain. And so people, just by listening to other people and what they were having going on in their brain, it was helping them to make sense and understand how their intuitive ability was working as well, or how it was functioning as well. So I think having something like that is super important because it helps people to identify their own struggles or what tends to be typical issues that happen for people who are entrepreneurs or who want to start their own business or in the process of getting their business off the ground.
Absolutely, because I think sometimes the best learning comes
Yeah.
from just listening to other people ask questions,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Because sometimes we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And so maybe you don't know what questions you need to be asking,
Yeah.
or maybe you don't realize you're struggling in a particular area because you've never done it before,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But then it takes one person to ask one question and then have me to give the answer, the guidance, the solution, or the additional resources to create it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that's something that's been holding me back. And
Mm.
now I have the answer to that.
Yeah. when I was like, I want to say 5 years ago, because I mean, growing up from the hood, you don't want to spend money on any extra stuff, or it's hard to put the dollar value on like this kind of work. And for me, it's like when I looked into coaches and I looked into people like brand strategists, etc., I was like, that's too expensive. I'm not going to spend the money on that, or I'm not going to, no, I can figure it out. But even then, it's so much harder to figure it out on your own when you have someone who's guiding you through the process. And quite honestly, I feel like I underpaid for the value that I got from the work that I did with you. And I feel like it is more of an investment than an expense, because it helped me to invest into my business, because I took that business more seriously and I took the brand more seriously. And I'm trying to build it into another phase or into its next role. So I think your work and what you did really helped me and got me a lot further along than I would have on my own, for sure. And I'm like so grateful for what you helped me with, because even after that, like even after I was kind of sad that our conversations or our meetings ended, because
I'm always sad.
Yeah, I was like, I don't, because it wasn't just you, hey, Ferny, this is what we need to do. Hey, this is what we're going to work on. Hey, this is what we're going to understand. Like, it wasn't just that. It was more of the connection with you. And the fact that I felt like you got what I was feeling, or you got it because you've been there, you've seen it. So it felt like I had an expert really guiding me through the whole process. And for people, I always suggest, like, you need to get yourself a coach then, or you need to go and get a brand strategist. And I've dropped your name with so many people that I've known over the years, because I'm like, reach out to Kristie, because she can probably help you with this. She knows how to deal with this, or she knows how to do this. Now, for people who don't want to spend the money, because there's going to be people out there who say, yeah, I don't really want to buy the program, or I don't really want to, devote the time or energy into that, but they still need something that can help them. Is there something like a free community or free things that you offer as goodies or as help for people who just don't want to put the money into it yet?
Yeah, because you might be that at the early stages where you haven't quite figured anything out yet, and you're not quite sure what you're going to put together, but you do want to be tapped in, right? Like we talked about before. So the free community that I have is called Social Influencer. And so in that space is where I provide the, marketing and branding and visibility tips to just make sense of what you're seeing and the information that's out there, because there's so much information out there, right? And so giving you a little bit of structure, a little bit of guidance, and a whole lot of sense to what it is that you actually need to be spending your time in, so that you're not just spinning your wheels and wasting your time, right? So I do a lot of free things in there, free challenges, free step-by-steps, free guides and resources and things like that. And it's a really great community and a perfect place to start if you're seriously thinking about building a business.
Yeah. If you could go back and tell yourself, like, the two most important things you think now, knowing what you know now about branding, knowing what you know now about dealing with people and clients, knowing what you know now, like if you were to go back to yourself like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, what two things would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself that it's okay to do it my way, right where I'm at, and to get tapped into the right community with the right coach to guide you.
Yeah. Have you had to deal with not being in the right community or having to?
Oh my gosh. No joke. I've probably invested over $200,000 in learning and educating and being in communities and hiring different coaches.
Yeah.
And I am really good at understanding what's not a good coach and not a good community fit for you.
Yeah.
So if anybody's wondering, like, how do I know if I'm a good fit? I have trainings for that in my free community on how to identify a good fit for you.
Yeah. I have a friend who people get, well, there's two things I want to say about that is people get stuck in this cycle or this loop where they keep trying different coaching strategies or different coaching methods. And they just like cycle. So they never actually start the work or start the business. They just keep taking course after course after course, thinking that there's a magic light or a magic switch that's going to take place. And what
I did that too.
Yeah. And I was doing that with the psychic stuff earlier on. And it's like you get stuck in that loop and you don't know how to really be successful because you got different ways of doing the same thing, but it's the same thing over and over and over again that you're hearing it from different coaches. I have a friend and I was chatting with him last night and I think he spent like $5,000 or $6,000 on a coaching program. And that's nowhere near that's like way more than what I spent with you. So I was like, oh my God, you totally spent way more money. And he's supposed to have like calls each week, but then he's also supposed to have connects with the coaches throughout the week. And he's reached out, and there's several coaches, and every time he reaches out, it's almost like crickets. And I'm like, I didn't have that experience with Kristie. Like, if I needed support or I needed help or I had a question, she made it really easy for me to reach out and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, or this is what I'm thinking about. What do you think? And so I felt like you were my personal coach, because you were my personal coach.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you had like 17 coaches that were operating or functioning for you. You were personally engaged in the process, which I think made it even more delicious, because it felt like I'm not alone, and she's with me. She's going to help me through the whole process.
And that's my mission. Exactly right there is like, I don't want people to feel unheard, unsupported, unencouraged, and invisible at the same time. I don't want you to be that wallflower. I want to teach you how to be the most beautiful bouquet in the middle of the room. But if you're in a program, in a community, or in a group where you're not getting the voice of the person that you hired, then you're not going to get the transformation that you're hoping for. What I would encourage people is just allow yourself to explore, allow yourself to ask questions, allow yourself to try different things. And most importantly, just allow yourself to be okay with who you are, where you are right now, because where you are is the perfect place to start.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. That's it. Perfect. All right. Cool. So anything else you want to tell me before we end?
There's always a million and one things I want to tell you.
Yeah.
But no, just I adore you. And I'm so thankful. This was such a good conversation. So thank you for.
Thanks for energetically tuning in. If you'd like to follow Kristie or know more about her work, you can go to KristieKeever.com. That's KristieKeever.com. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to know more, then like, share, and review my show on your podcast listening platform. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and check out my website at fernandomarone.com for additional content, updates, articles, and more. Until next time, kiddos, and have yourselves a namaste.